Since the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 75 years ago, nations have been fighting to ensure that everyone enjoys fundamental human rights like the right to life, right to freedom of movement and speech, right to freedom of worship and association, right to healthcare and education, etc. The female gender, often considered the weaker sex, often get their rights trampled upon by society. In Nigeria, many women have lost their lives due to domestic violence. According to statistics from the UNFPA, 1 in 3 Nigerian women have experienced physical violence by age 15. Sexual and gender-based violence remains one of the biggest threats to life of women and the girl child in this part of the world. How can this ugly trend be eliminated? We have joining us via Zoom lawyer, women's rights activist, and the founder of Women Empowerment and Legal Aid Initiative, Funmi Falana. Also joining us via Zoom is the Executive Secretary, Lagos State Domestic and Violence Agency, Titilola Vivour Adeniyi. Ladies, good morning. It's good to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning. We're happy to be here.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
All right, let me begin with you, Mrs. Funmi Falana. When you look at how much of advocacy we have put in the fight against sexual and gender-based violence, how far would you say we have come? Are we making progress at all? Or are we still lagging behind?
Thank you very much. I would say we have put so much effort, but we still need to put more effort. And I will also say that a little progress has been recorded, but we still can do much, much, much better, at least compared with other societies in the world.
Right.
I am saying that, yes.
Go ahead.
I am saying that, yes, the issue of violence in the society, as well as violence in the home against women generally, still can be said to be still very rampant in Nigeria. And of course, there are many factors that are connected with this. You will agree with me that on a daily basis, we still get to hear about issues of molestation of women, rape of underage, rape of women and other things. And in the home as well, we still get to hear of issues of domestic violence. And I want us to also remember that when we talk about this domestic violence, we are not just talking about wife battery, because domestic violence can be physical. Domestic violence can also be psychological. It can be emotional. It can be sexual. It can be verbal. While women face violence in the home, they still face violence in the society, because issues of discrimination against women in the society is a form of violence. Issues of marginalization in public offices is still a form of violence. So when we talk about how far we have gone, I will rate Nigeria very low.
Right. What's it for you as head of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, Mrs. Titilola? What's it for you? We have, for the past 2 weeks or thereabout now, the 16 days of gender activism, and it's been one activity after the other. But how far have we really gone? Are we making progress?
Thank you so much. And just like Mrs. Falana said, I think we're gradually breaking the culture of silence. It's important for us to note that these issues have always been there. And what we're witnessing now is an increase in reporting of increase in formal and informal reporting of cases. If you look at the data, this year, we've been able to provide services to over 4,333 survivors who have reported various forms of domestic and sexual violence. We know that we have not even scratched the surface, because these issues continue to remain one of the most underreported cases. But with the heightened awareness, increased advocacy, demonstration of political will, we would say that we're well on our way in, if not eradicating, or reducing the occurrence to the barest minimum.
Right. Let me come back to you, Mrs. Falana, talking about We are not yet scratching the surface, and the fact that we haven't really gotten to the root of the major cause of these matters of sexual and gender-based violence. What would it take for us to get down to the root, even beyond scratching the surface?
Thank you very much. Yes, like Titilola said, why we get reports, and like in my own organizations also, we get on a daily basis as of today, we get up to 20 on average of cases of domestic violence being reported to us, and we have what we call mediations, and sometimes we may need to go to court. But I want to also say that issues of violence do not get reported because of so many factors. Number one, we talk about the culture of silence, which is the misconception of people believe when you report this, you may, of course, lose your dependency on the fellow that is the perpetrator of the violence. And of course, you may also have what they call stigma, especially in cases of rape. And so there are laws against domestic violence. But the issue is that people must speak out before these laws can be taken the benefits of. We say a lot has been done in the area of domesticating the Child Rights Act, which also guides again of and makes provisions against child rights law. Of recent, it was reported that about 34 states out of 36 in Nigeria have domesticated child rights law, which means that child rights law are applicable in these states. But unfortunately, people don't get to use this law because they don't speak out. Again, the Law Against All Persons Prohibition Act, which all persons prohibition, which we call VAP, Law Against Violence Against All Persons Prohibition Act, which was enacted in 2015, has also been domesticated by about 34 states in Nigeria, with the exception of Zamfara State and Kano State. But I want to tell you that despite these laws, we still don't get the benefits of this law by the people because they don't speak out. And one of the very terrible things that is militating against speaking out is the culture. This culture of silence, we want to say, must be broken, must be taken away. Now, we get to experience in our own organization that when people bring the case of rape to us and we get to court, we always try, okay, when you have a case, unfortunately, when you become a victim of rape, make sure you speak out, but do not wash your underpants because the evidence of your underpants will be the primary evidence for the forensic evidence that we need in court. But go to the police station thereafter, after reporting at the hospital, take your forensic evidence, then go to the police station and report. Very many times we discover that people back out after some time. And you ask them, they'll say, lawyer, don't be angry. We don't want to pursue it because it casts a sort of stigma on the person. And of course, nobody's going to marry her again. And I will say, no, if we do not get to prosecute these people, unfortunately, we will not be able to deter prospective offenders who are out there, who may want to commit the same offense. Again, talking about domestic violence in the home, when a man is violent and the relationship is becoming so toxic, we always advise the woman to speak out, run for your life. But they don't want to run because one of the reasons, again, is economic independence. Because they depend on the man. And then the issue is, where do I start from? How do I go? There are occasions of people that come to my office to report cases of stepfathers molesting their stepchildren right under the nose of the mother. But the mother cannot speak out because the mother will be considered, if I speak out, what happens? Where do we go? Who is going to take care of us? And so taking this issue from there, my organization has looked at it, and one of the things we need to do is also to economically empower women. Women must be empowered. We have a home, a shelter for victims of domestic violence, which Wheeler has just built. And in addition to that, we have a skill acquisition school for them. So we want to say that when a woman is facing violence, after coming to us, we want to take you away from the site of the violence. Then we have a home where we provide for you. Thereafter, we put you in the skill acquisition school. When you're able to acquire the skill, we give you instruments of trade, articles of trade, like sewing machines, hairdressing. We have many of these departments. We buy for them and we give them money to start. Why we are doing this is because we want them to be economically empowered. Again, we talk about discrimination. Like I said, discrimination against women is a form of violence in their society. Now, of recent, Wheeler and 22 other non-governmental organizations went to court to challenge the appointments in positions in public offices recently. That CEDAW, which is the Convention Against All Forms of Elimination of Violence Against Women, provides that at least 35% of public offices must be given to women. Of course, in the last appointment, I'm sure everybody knows that it wasn't so. So we went to court, and the court held that yes, it should be so, and that the government should adhere to this. So that is the law as of today. It has not changed. And we are looking at what's going to happen in the next dispensation.
All
so
right, Mrs.
these
Falana.
are the things we want to cover. Yes.
Yes, Ms. Falana, let me interrupt you, Mrs. Falana, and compare your analysis of progress with that of Mrs. Vivour Adeniyi. So we've spoken about, or you have spoken about, reporting now increasing, although some may say, how do we, gauge the number of people making reports? But there are some concerns about, family structures. We see some of these appalling crimes happening within what should be a safe space, but, fathers raping or molesting their wives, their children, and all that. And this must be a tough job in this regard, and that might also be a challenge in terms of reporting when influence comes from in-laws and family members, that you find a way to bury this case. After all, it's family. Don't stain the family's image. How do you work around these realities?
Yes. Thank you. Now, like I said, when we talk about
Mrs. Falana,
about domestic,
Mrs. Falana, I'm so sorry. Yes. The question was meant for Mrs. Titilola, but you will get to speak on this after her. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, this is the reality when we have survivors that sort of fall off the criminal system or the road to accessing justice formally because of societal pressures, family pressures, especially when the survivors are financially dependent on the abuser. I think it just mirrors, our socialization, the way we are brought up, the premium that is placed on marriage. A woman is not deemed to be complete, if she's not married, and if she doesn't stay married, irrespective of the trauma she may be experiencing in the home. And so that's why we look at this from a holistic lens. When we engage survivors, we let them know, as professionals, we are not there to advise. We counsel them, we give them the options available to them, especially when it is clear that this case may be a potential murder case. We let them know the options available to them. We let them know that there are different doors to access justice. The fact that you report at the police station does not necessarily need to end up in court and, prison. The fact that you even approach the court for a restraining order it's not punitive. It's to protect you, to prevent you from experiencing any other form of violence. Sometimes we have to also engage members of the family to let them know why it's important for these cases to be escalated. We let them know of people that have unfortunately lost their lives as a result of violence. We try to address their concerns and their fears. Why is it that you do not want this case to proceed? What are your fears? Are you experiencing any pressure? And they tell us different things. Oh, I don't have money to prosecute this matter. I don't want my daughter's name to be on the pages of the newspaper. I just want them to work on their marriage.
Mrs. Falana, my question comes to you. You're launching a shelter now for
so
persons.
That they are empowered for themselves.
Right. Right. You're launching a shelter for persons who have faced or who are victims of domestic violence. And the question I want to ask has to do with at what point does a woman who is faced with domestic violence rather leave her home? Because sometimes some of these women do not even know that they are facing domestic violence. That's on the one hand. And then there's the aspect of these victims being sympathetic to their abusers. How do you resolve all of this?
Yes, thank you very much. At what point do they get to know that they are being abused? Every day, abuse may be coming up. But when the relationship becomes so toxic that it becomes so threatening to life, we ask them to flee. But before then, the thing must have been coming up. And that is why we say they should speak out. Like I said, on a regular basis, we get to mediate between husbands and wives, cases of violations in their homes. And so when issues like this come, or when they come to us, when they come to report, we don't just ask them to go immediately, but we let them know the laws and we try to see how we can mediate. We try to see how we can talk them out. And so a lot depends on education, campaign, and publicity. So because it is when they know the rights applicable, it is when they know the laws that are on their side, that they can take the benefits of the law. So it is until we are able to, if we are unable to mediate, to reconcile, or to take out of them this violence or whatever is causing the violence, then we have the option of going to court. There is, in Lagos State, any two people cohabiting, either they are married legally or they are not married, as long as they are living together, there is a law against domestic violence. You can have access to court, and the court will make a preservation order either to remove the perpetrator of the violence from the home, or to remove the victim or the survivor from the home. And there will be orders of payment of maintenance and the things to be done. Then the court will also ask somebody to continue, the one we call social worker, to continue to monitor them, to see whether the perpetrator has really changed. This law does not dissolve the marriage. But if the marriage, the perpetrator is unable to be rehabilitated, then we ask that completely the marriage could not be dissolved. But they could separate. And this is what we keep telling them. But because of culture, people do not speak out. And why they do not speak out is because we do not get to know that getting out of this does not mean getting out of life. Getting out of an abusive marriage or separating does not mean the end of the life of the woman.
I'd like for you to quickly address the matter of victims being sympathetic to their abusers. How do you resolve that?
Yes, thank you. Well, most of the time, they come to our office, they tell, oh, it will change. It is because of the society. As a matter of fact, they believe the culture. Now, I don't know, I think I should mention this. There are some of our laws that encourage domestic violence. And I'm sure this may be strange to many today. Like Section 55 of the Penal Code in Nigeria specifies that a man can correct his wife by beating her as long as the beating does not cause harm. This is torture. Dignity, justice, and liberty are the three themes that we are looking at in this year's International Human Rights Day. So if the law or the society encourages beating of a wife because it is for the purpose of correction, and the wife is there to say, I am a wife, yeah, he will change. I don't want the society to know what is happening. All these are the things that contribute and also help to continue to perpetrate social and, of course, domestic violence in the society.
All right, ma'am. Let me put you on hold.
So we are saying women should know that a violent man may find it difficult to change, except you bring the arms of the law against him.
Mrs.
And that
Falana.
leaving the marriage is not the end of her life.
All right. That said, let's hear, from Mrs. Titilola. Are you there? Are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Right.
I am. So sorry for the breaking.
Right. We know you have a busy day and an event, happening. We appreciate this, but let me see if I can push this short questions to you. First, the issue of, the law. Is the law on the side of the women, when the courts have to come in? Mrs. Falana spoke earlier about, evidence of sexual matters. That is an age-long issue. So what's the current position now to enable more people come to court, and so that they won't be shamed in court, on another level of abuse? And the issue of whether women are enablers of crimes perpetrated against them, maybe domestic, an argument that started from the woman and then the man is provoked to attacking. What do you say about these issues?
Okay, thank you so much. So the law is actually, when we talk about the law, let's zero it down. So we look at the Protection Against Domestic Violence law. That law is actually gender neutral. It says any person who is experiencing domestic violence, any kind of violence for that matter, is encouraged to apply for a protection or a restraining order. So the law is actually not, it's gender neutral. But of course, the statistics show that we have more women. We have more women that are at risk of experiencing violence, and also more women that report domestic and sexual violence. In terms of the protection that is provided, most recently, the Lagos State House of Assembly passed the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency law, which provides that identity details of survivors of sexual and gender-based violence should remain confidential, should not be disclosed, except the survivor, an adult survivor, decides to waive their right to remain unknown. And so that's just one of the ways that the law is there to protect the survivor and ensure that their details are not released for the public. When we're talking about prosecuting cases of sexual violence, especially when it involves children, the administration of criminal justice law also provides that details of the child who is the survivor should not be released. You can use pseudonyms. It also provides for the courts to request for a closed session where it's just the survivor and the other party, just so to maintain that confidentiality, knowing fully well that some of these survivors do not come forward because they are afraid that their identity would be published. So your second question about whether women can enablers. Yeah, there is that school of thought that some women may be enablers, some women may encourage the perpetration of domestic and sexual violence. We've had cases where survivors report to us and they said that their mothers encourage them to remain in the abusive relationships. I do not want to tread that path or toe that path because it's almost a bit of a blame game. I would just like to focus on the fact that, we are all a product of our socialization.
All right.
If a mother experienced...
Okay, if you can quickly, because we have a very limited time, and I want Mrs. Falana to quickly touch on something, her event that is coming up on the 12th. You are launching a shelter for domestic violence, as well as honoring some persons who have contributed immensely to the empowerment of women as well as human rights. Quickly speak to us on that. Mrs. Falana, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, our event is coming up on 12th. We have a home. We just completed a home, a 17-room home for shelter for victims, survivors, I would call survivors of domestic violence. And also we have the school for the victims who are victims, not just domestic, but in the society. So people who have had cause to face violence in the society or in the home. We try to rehabilitate them by putting them in the home, and this home will just be a makeshift hostel for like 3 months. Within which period they will be able to get their own permanent home. Then we have also decided that while they are there, we have a school, we put them in our school for acquisition of skill. They can be trained in the art of fashion designing, hairdressing, shoemaking, attire making, and different types. And at the end of the 3-month period, we give them their articles of trade as well as money to start off. We have also looked into the society and we have decided to name some of our rooms after those who have campaigned and struggled against violence in the society, and of course some survivors of violence in the society. So, like for example, we're going to name one of the rooms against the little boy Oromani that died in the school there. We have decided to choose him as one of them because he happened to be a victim of violence in the society, and he died in the process. So many other people who have contributed and who are still contributing, we also have rooms named after them. Yes, and our event is coming up on the 12th day of December. It is also to celebrate the International Human Rights Day.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We'll have to leave our conversation here now for want of time, but we must thank you, Mrs. Funmi Falana, women's rights activist and the founder of Women Empowerment and Legal Aid Initiative, a lawyer as well. And we also want to thank Executive Secretary, Lagos State Domestic and Violence Agency, Titilola Vivour Adeniyi, for your time on the program.